It's a great reminder that you can be as wild and chaotic as you like, and you can still edit and then contain it in a nice little package at the end. Today I'm revisiting my baby wipes. So using baby wipes as a tool to get depth, new ways of doing things, just to open up your mind to new possibilities. It's not quite adult finger painting, but it's not very far either. It's allowing a malleable, softer tool to give you some unexpected marks, to find new ways of adding paint layers, and to just make a mess. So come on with me. I'll show you what I ended up making today. I made some abstract florals, which kind of just came out of the ether as I was creating this. So come along for the ride and I'll show you what I did and how you can do it too. Quick reminder that the way that you can help me the most is by liking, commenting, sharing videos, because then YouTube says, I think we should send her videos to more people, and then more people will be able to see them and I'll be able to share my art and my videos even farther. So thank you so much for all your comments and likes, and I would ask that you please keep them coming. I love hearing from you first and foremost, and I appreciate all of your support and encouragement. I'm starting out with 3 smallish panels. These are 8x8 squares, and they're very thin. They're not cradled panels, these are just panels. They have a slot in the back that you can hang them on a nail. Nothing super fancy. And the wipes that I'm using are from Costco. They're Kirkland wipes, nothing special about them. Again, you can use wet paper towels, you could use a wet rag, you could use many things for this. I happen to be using a baby wipe. There are several different ways to use baby wipe to apply paint. This is the most obvious one. This is the one that you perhaps have the least control of. I'm just using it to literally spread paint around. I'm trying to pick 3 different things. I have no plan from a composition standpoint at this time. I'm just smearing paint. It's a loosely holiday theme with the first couple colors. This is fluorescent red from Nova Color Paints. And I like that I'm getting some, for lack of a better word, watered down, thinner areas where it's not so saturated and it's not so thick. And also the thinner areas that are a softer, if you can call fluorescent red soft, but it's a softer version of that. All right, some hair drying, zooming, look how fast that was. Now I'm going to add some Titan Green Pale. This is a very loose holiday tie-in to Christmas, I suppose. Very non-traditional colors, fluorescent red and celadon green, like our ancestors used to use. I'm applying this the same way. I'm using the wipe to spread the paint around. It's thicker in some places, thinner in others. As the paint leaves the baby wipe, and there's some moisture in the wipe, so it thins things out, but still allows more color to come off, which would be different than a dry paper towel, which it would just stop and it would be more like a dry brushing effect. This is more of a veil, if it's an opaque color, or a glaze where you can see through it. You can see the color behind it. You can see the shapes behind it and lines. If I had lines on the whatever they're called, on the panels. I like using the baby wipe here because it does gives me less control over where the paint goes, ultimately. And it gives me less control over the shapes that I'm making, but they're still somewhat predictable because I do move it around wherever I want to. This is a black China marker, or I think it's also called a grease pencil. I really like these. I'm carving right into the paint here. The paint is still wet. It will not smear or smudge, and it will write on anything. Writes on plastic. It's originally, I believe, meant to write on china dishes. So it'll write on any surface. It's harder to get off, so don't recommend using it on glass or anything that you want to keep clean. But its superpower is that it will write on anything. I'm sure someone can probably prove me wrong on that, but everything that I've tried, it works fine. More hair drying. That's just to dry the paint. I don't need to dry the marker itself. So another baby wipe, actually it's more of the same one. I'm just using it to stamp different. This is a cream. You can use one edge to make a fine line, swirl it around, see how it fades out and gets clunky at the end, because it is, after all, malleable. And I'm just trying to make different marks. These three will all be related. They will all not be the same. Right now it's absolute chaos, which is fine because I'm looking for something just to be a mess, and then I'm going to clean it up somehow. And see what I mean about I can control it, but also I can't control it. That swirl I made in the middle panel, you know, it's messy, it's very imperfect, but I was able to control the swoops and loops. I just had to allow for it not to be perfect. Okay, back to pure experimentation. Do you see that I put a horizontal line of phthalo turquoise paint on my palette? It's hard to see because the palette itself has blue paper towels underneath that. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get a little bit thicker of a line there because my bottle was clogged, unfortunately, or it had stage fright or something. But I'm putting it on the very edge of this baby wipe so that I can get some sort of lines here. This is a terrible angle, sorry. But I'm using it just to touch the edge to the panels, trying to get some lines. Wasn't quite sure what to do with it at first, but it's kind of cool to make these shapes. So it's like a stamped, well, it's a stamped line, but I can change how the line is. If there's a curve, if there's a wobble, if I wanted to pull it really straight, I could make it straight-ish. It probably wouldn't be perfectly straight, but it's another way to make marks. And I knew I wanted to have some turquoise, but not a ton of turquoise in here. So it was another way to make a mark with a different, well, same tool, different way of using the tool. Going for an orb shape there. All of these things are going to be irregular. And that's part of the freedom of playing with these items. None of this is exact. These are not stencils by any means. I decided to block out some of the background because of all the chaos, trying to clarify things a bit. This is Payne's Gray that I'm adding, which is a transparent kind of navy blue type color. And I will tell you that as soon as I did this, I was like, oh dear, I don't like this at all. I wish I had kept it. But the show must go on, and I wanted them to be similar, so I decided I would keep going. I did spritz it with some water. It's hard to see there, but there are some little water droplets that I was able to show from the underlayers. It worked okay. Very mixed feelings about these because as much as I didn't like all the chaos and wanted to simplify it, I was not happy that I simplified it in this way. This is a desperate attempt to try to get some more of those water droplets to show through, but everything was dry. This is a white greens pencil, just like the black one, but white. Typically I don't do shapes that resemble things, but after I did this middle uh, white line that looked almost like a flower, the middle one kind of looks like a bug, I felt like it would be fun to do the other ones the same way. The other ones look more like flowers than bugs though, so I was happy with that. See, I finally got some good water droplets. Just had to let it wait longer and spray it earlier. I wasn't loving the shape of that orb that I had left, so adding a bit more Payne's Gray. Sometimes when you're not sure that you love what you did, you need to double down on it. At least that's what I tell myself. Because again, I wasn't loving the Payne's Gray, but I kept adding it. So, as my mom says, in for a penny, in for a pound. You might as well just stick with it, lean in, and see what happens. Similarly, going back to the white grease pencil, this was my favorite of the flower shapes. I think that's when I actually decided, okay, fine, they're flowers now. And then I made the marks more intentionally like a very simplified flower. Things I do like about these right now at this date, I like that the flowers have that bright red in them. I like that there's a lot going on as far as texture in the flowers and also in the background. The water droplets bring the whatever, bring the magic from the previous layers. And I like how different the background is from the action of the middle of the flower. You saw I just folded up a previously used wipe. You can use these wipes, a million times. You may get some extra colors in there if you're using dark colors and then switching to light colors. So just know what you're getting yourself into. But you can fold them, unfold them, refold them, and use different parts of the wipe. This is green gold that I'm adding. I wanted something even punchier than the fluorescent red because that felt like only the fluorescent red parts were highlighted. This way there's a little more spice to the whole flower. All right, and this is just more experimentation. I sprayed a little extra water on this wipe, picked up some black paint, and decided to squeeze it all out on top here. It was much more watery than I expected. Potentially didn't need the extra water added, but it did let the drops fall very freely. And then I decided I thought if I wiped them up or, blotted them with paper towel, all the black would go away since it was so wet. So I decided that I would just dry it and take the time, and it took forever. But I wanted to see what would happen when those dried to see what marks that they left. As you can see, I was able to chase the drops around a bit to make some lines. I did pick up some areas where it was falling off the panel. My intention set out was not to chase them around. However, it did make some kind of cool lines and it got some of the wetness off the panel because this got boring very quickly for me. But again, I was already in too deep and I figured I would just keep going since I started it this way and didn't want to blot the paint at that time. And especially in the left-hand panel, I like how those drops were in the body of that flower. The marks were very subtle on top of the Payne's Gray background, as you can see. They're still noticeable, but not obvious for sure. The way that I attack these paintings is not for everyone, for sure. I tend to create a lot of chaos and put way too many marks in at first. And then I start making decisions on what to keep, what to cover up, and oftentimes I regret what I cover up. but it all adds to the, the depth of the piece. Even if I cover something up, there's still something showing through from the other layers. And so I wasn't crazy about the Payne's gray, so then I thought, what if I add some fluorescent red? Uh, I had hoped that maybe because mixing fluorescent red with Payne's gray kind of makes a cool plum color, I thought if I just layer them lightly together, maybe I can replicate that plum color, and it did not work. So now I've got some sort of weird electric Payne's gray. But in the interest of cohesiveness, I figured I would just do it to all of them. Because again, in for a penny, in for a pound. You can see my hesitation. I'm trying to find any other way to get around this, but ultimately, just go for it. The whole thing's an experiment. I have to remind myself of that. I would recommend that you do that for yourself too. All of this is an experiment, even if we think we know what's going to happen. We're still testing our theories because of what happened last time, maybe, or because of what we think might happen, or we saw someone else do it. Who knows? This might be the best decision I'm making. Probably not, but you never know. Spritz some water on there, trying to get something of value out of it. I don't know why, but this new color that I made, I do not like it. It's like, I don't know, is fluorescent burgundy a color? Maybe it's a fluorescent burgundy. Either way, not my jam. But new, and now I know what happens when I try to layer fluorescent red on top of Payne's gray. So if I ever need this color again, now I know what to do to find it. And again, here I go, doubling down on the colors that I don't like together. Let's add more. But I have nothing to lose. I already am not thrilled with how it is, so why not just muddy the waters a bit more? At least now it's adding something that wasn't there before. Adding these really bright colors. Now the background is back into play, and it's not just a flat slate of blue. So that's a positive. Everything is a push-pull. Is this better? Is this worse? Is this better? Is this worse? I decided it was worse, so I decided I would just go with my Celadon Titan Green Pale. And shocker, I didn't like this either. I'm now wiping away the flowers. I am wiping away everything. It dried really fast because I put it on pretty thin. I tried to keep some of the flowers. The train's coming off the tracks. The words epic fail come to mind. I have some regrets here. Try to wipe it off. Doesn't wipe off. It's too much of it had dried. This is the messy middle. It's still the messy middle. So for anyone who thinks that I have a plan, even though I openly tell you that I don't have a plan, and that my plans always work out, or my paintings always work out, please take a screenshot of this and hang it up on your wall so that you remember that I also just have no idea what I'm doing much of the time. And sometimes it leads to great results. And sometimes I get lost in the middle and have regrets. But the only way that this becomes an actual failure is if I stop here and walk away. I shouldn't say that. There've been times that I will walk away just to kind of regroup and like get my head back in the game. But I mean, like, if I just take these and throw them away right now, put them in the trash, recycle them, that's when I actually fail. Because then, and only then, I can't make any changes. So I have no chance of making it better. I've now decided that baby wipes were not the way to apply that for it to be more opaque. So I've switched over to my color shaper. The baby wipes have provided me a slew of random marks up to this point. And now in my editing, I'm going back and using things that will give me more opaque results. I'm still not sold that this is the right color at this time, but I do like that it is much more opaque and helps me out. And you can see all the history. You can see the lumps and bumps and the texture underneath. So even though I'm covering up all the things that were there, the gist of everything is still there. All right, so now what? I've got my chaotic orbs. Here comes the grease pencil. This time I'm doing the flower outlines in black. And this time, since I know I want them to be flowers, I don't have that weird bug shape in the middle either. So already liking this better than the original flower shapes. I had to play around to decide what I wanted. And now I'm using a knitting needle to just carve some random squiggles into the celadon just for fun. I basically did this because I wanted there to be an opportunity for something to shine through from underneath the celadon. Wasn't sure I loved them, but it was what it was. And similarly, I'm carving into some of these petals just to make a different mark. Make it not quite so simple. And guess what? I'm changing up the background again. I'm going with straight black this time. I liked the black against the celadon. I'm using a raggedy old brush that's not at all tapered anymore, so I'm not going very close to those petals. And I decided I'm just going to embrace the boldness that already exists in these flowers with their crazy, chaotic, I don't know, party vibe, I guess, in the middle. And I'm just going to lean into that contrast with the black. Get some crisp outlines. And I'm just leaning into it. Why not? The contrast with the celadon versus the black wasn't as bold as I wanted it to be. So I'm adding a creamy white color that I mixed in the hopes that this will bring me a better feeling about it. And I do like it better with this. The lighter petals make them, it turns them into something instead of just being part of the background from before. And the more opaque I can get them, the brighter they are, which just enhances that contrast. As I've been paying attention to these petals now, I'm noticing that the insides of the flower centers are just feeling further apart from the petals, and I want them to be connected, and I want them to be round-ish, and I want them to be more cohesive within those centers. So I'm coming in with a fluorescent red glaze, again going back to the baby wipes for this, trying to balance where I want the brightest color, the most saturated color, and also where I want it to be more transparent to show everything underneath that I don't want in a fluorescent red haze. So the color's punchier now. It looks very happy. Now it's time to go in with the black on everything. When in doubt, just keep going. Keep doing whatever it is. And if you do one thing to one of them, in my world, I figure, well, I might as well just do it to all of them because it puts me on autopilot for the second two. I'm taking this tool, it's actually a pottery tool, and I just did a light outline of each petal with that, which gives it the look of the one on the left, even though the black is much closer to the petals this time on the others. And now I'm starting to get really interested in these flowers. Apparently, my paint knew I needed them, but I didn't know yet. Now, the one in the middle is still troubling me because the center of the flower is not very round, which is kind of driving me crazy. Now, using this tool to carve in, you can actually see some of the lightness from the previous layers because it does slice through all of that. So it gives just a little bit more depth in the background, even though the background is very opaque and black right now. The texture is still there. Carving it is still there. You can still see that there's history. And it shouldn't matter, like logically to me, it shouldn't matter what's underneath, but it just does. It's kind of like when you go to your favorite restaurant, you know that the food would still taste just as good if you were eating it inside a McDonald's. You would still love your favorite meal, but it would be made so much better if you were eating your favorite meal in your favorite restaurant with all the ambiance and the people around you and the flower or the candle on the table. It would just feel like a richer experience. That's all this is. I really feel like it's the depth and knowing that there's been more layers in here than what you just see is like that little bit of, I mean, it's, I hate to use the word magic, but it's kind of like a little bit of magic. It's just more of the, like the creative spirit that the artist is adding, I guess. If you worked on one 8x8 panel for a year and painted a new layer every day for a year, it would be a totally different painting than if you just copied what you ended up with at the end of a year and recreated that in one layer. That's how I feel. Feel free to debate me in the comments if you feel differently. That's just how it feels. And whether it should, like logically, it doesn't make sense why they would be different. But it just is. It just is. In summary, depth matters. And all the layers that you paint over, they still count and they still matter even if you can't see what colors that they were in the past. Adding some yellow now. I wanted this to be a bit more dynamic than just the fluorescent red, and I'm just adding more richness. The more different colors that flow together, it changes the other paints underneath just a bit, even if they're transparent. And again, it's just more subtle differences that add depth, that make it more fun to look at, to see where does this orange now begin and end. And I'm using this to cheat and to make the centers of the flowers rounder, so that I like the shapes better. And again, the push and the pull of, did I like that? Do I not like that? I decided there wasn't enough depth left because the yellow I applied very generously and it kind of flattened things out. So I apologize, you can't see this, it's out of frame, but I took some phthalo turquoise. Oh, there we go. Now you can see it. And I painted on some parchment, just some spots. And then I pressed that against the flower centers to get a print of the swirls that I was painting. And any one of these steps is not like that was the correct step or not the correct step. It's just that that happened to be the next step. This is more fluorescent red. I decided to splatter some of it on top of the flowers. Again, I wanted the black to not just be a flat black. I wanted there to be something else going on, even if it was subtle. And the drops are very small, so it is very subtle, but it's still there. And it's on some of the white petals. And as much as I don't typically make recognizable shapes in my art, this was a really fun exercise because the insides of these flowers are kind of pure chaos. The petals are very simple, but also a huge high contrast with the background. And it was just a lot of fun to experiment. It's a great reminder that you can be as wild and chaotic as you like, and you can still edit and then contain it in a nice little package at the end, should you choose to do so. So let me know what you've done that is just wacky and wild and your favorite way to tame your chaos. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would love to send you more videos every week. Hit the subscribe button, and if you hit the alert bell, you'll get an alert every time I post a new video. Take care, everybody.